morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Patterson, and I am from Bryson Insurance. And welcome to our webinar on cyber risk for boards and management teams. Today, I am joined by two fantastic leaders in this field, Kyle Gray from Ridge Canada. Kyle, if you want to say hi, yep. And Jeff Dolly from Cybersecurity Compliance Corp. Morning, Jeff.
Hello.
And he's proudly repping the brand. And today we have a great webinar that has had. I'm really happy and surprised to see how many people have registered for this event. We believe sometimes that we get a bit webinar heavy right now in this era. But it's obvious that this content is extremely important, and it's great to see companies and organizations, not-for-profits, taking a specific interest in protecting themselves and their stakeholders through this. So just a little bit about Kyle and Jeff. So Kyle is the Director of Underwriting for Ridge Canada. So Ridge is a cyber insurance specialist, and we work very, very closely with Kyle and the team there at Ridge. He joined Ridge back in 2017 and is responsible for leading underwriting strategy, product development, and broker relations. And he's actually been working pre-Ridge with major Canadian and international insurance companies. So he has a specific focus on governance products, including D&O policies, E&O, and cyber insurance as well. Jeff is from Cybersecurity Compliance Corp, and he is their president and founder. And Jeff is a fantastic resource to have everywhere. He has spent 25 years working in finance and technology and has spent 10 years as a CFO, including 5 years with a publicly listed company, along with 5 years as a CTO and CIO. So he brings a really different perspective to the conversation about how to actually have this as a governance conversation at the board or within a management team. So just a couple of high-level points here to get us started before I hand this over to Kyle. So there's a bunch of different types of businesses in here. There's a lot of not-for-profits. There's companies from all over Canada. There's some from global companies in here too. There's companies that have around 10 employees and companies that have thousands of employees as part of this. So we're going to try to tailor this to really make an impact and opportunities or places to listen from today. So one is, do we know our primary organizational cyber risks? How would it impact our organization if incident X happened? And what would we know to do? Or would we know what to do? And how often does our leadership team discuss, track, and update our cyber health? And can I spot any quick wins today? And with that, what can I take back to the next management team or board meeting to deliver value right away? A thought piece here. Many companies have experienced this exact type of screen, specifically even from May ransomware. So if you were to open your own computer and see this one morning, what would you do? Do you have that clearly articulated? Is that clear to yourself? If it's clear to yourself, great. Is it clear to your employees or your team members? Is it clear to the board members? Is it clear through the organization? And what is your organization doing to actually prevent it as best as possible? It's never foolproof. And what is your organization doing to minimize the impact of it once it does hit? And then do you have a continuity plan in place should something like this happen to get back up and serving your stakeholders as fast as possible? What I wanted to show here too, and you can go check this out live right after this webinar, but there's a number of live cyber threat maps that exist. This shows that today, I pulled this morning before the webinar, there's been over 8 million attacks that's been tracked here today already. And it's really neat to see where they're coming from and where they're heading to, but just know it is rampant. And given where we are in COVID-19, ransomware and other types of attacks are just booming right now because people feel more vulnerable and are looking for information. A piece here, and this is actually a recent study, so that's why I wanted to show it from IBC. They polled 300 small and medium-sized business owners in Canada with fewer than 500 employees. So I think it's a really nice piece to kind of start from for yourself. So They recognize that 44% of small businesses do not have any defenses against possible cyber attacks today. They're not doing any proactive measures. And 60% have no insurance to help them recover if an attack occurs. Nearly 1 in 5 businesses polled say they have been affected by a cyber attack or a data breach within the last 2 years. So 20%. And if you're not part of that, if you're part of the 80%, just know that that this is sweeping across all businesses. 37% of businesses hit by a data breach estimate that the cost was around $100,000. I would assert that they probably have not taken in all of factors of cost, including opportunity cost and system recovery time, and just employee lost time of being able to perform their responsibilities in an effective way. And 1 in 5 had no idea the cost of the breach, which I would believe is actually a more accurate answer. And half of all small business owners believe that their business may be vulnerable to a cyber attack. And about half again say that they're concerned about how a breach could affect their business, which I totally get why there's so many people on today. At a high level, there's a common belief that it's expensive to put in a smart cybersecurity solution or cybersecurity strategy. But there's a couple of things to consider: that it does not have to blow up the company budget. It's less technology investment dependent than you may assume. You're already investing in certain technologies already today. It is something that is manageable. It involves all stakeholders in the organization, including clients, and you can't outsource it to make the risk go away. And we hope that this webinar actually helps bring that reality to you here. And we understand why business people and not-for-profits have trouble getting to it, because we spend so much time, especially now, putting out fires all day, and it's hard to think about getting into this potentially daunting conversation, especially if we're not tech-minded individuals. There was a recent study done, and I'm going to show you some images, but this is feedback from some of the top 23 financial organizations in the world. And so they are asking themselves questions about the nature of board oversight, where it comes to cyber risks, looking at committees, who serves on them, how often do they meet, forming actual technology committees, and then the boards becoming more aware of these risks, so understanding them better and increasing their skills and expertise. So, what is your board doing around these 3 things? If you don't have a board because the size of your organization, or because you're a business, not a not-for-profit, consider injecting here your management team instead, and just think of the same questions. So again, this is what I would call is a high-level benchmark of where you could want to get to as an organization. And so of the 23 companies surveyed, 95% say that their boards have time to discuss on the agenda their cybersecurity risks and technology risks 4 or more times per year. And I would imagine that's going to keep growing. And they allocate 30 minutes to 2 hours on their agenda to talk about this specific topic. As well, again, recognizing the bar is high here. So companies providing regular updates to the full board, 91% of the respondents say that they do this on a regular basis, and they also involve the board in cybersecurity exercises. So again, if you don't have a board, just replace management in there and recognize that, how often is whoever's leading the cybersecurity front within your organization bringing that information to the management team, and how often are the cybersecurity leaders involved in exercises around cybersecurity. With this, I'm going to hand it on over to Kyle from Ridge to talk about the current state of cyber risk and seeing what is he seeing from the insurance side. So Kyle, it is handed over to you.
Awesome, thanks, Kyle. In terms of, I guess, the uniform today, Jeff's repping the brand, and Kyle's very, business professional. I'm representing the COVID quarantine with my new beard and my T-shirt and Lululemon pants on. So hopefully everybody else is comfortable today too. To get started, Kyle gave a great kind of overview about what Ridge Canada is. Again, we were established in 2016. we're a Canadian-based managing general underwriter, managing general agency, which is just a bit of insurance speak. We were nominated for MGA of the Year in 2018 and 2019. And our brand name Ridge actually comes from Tom Ridge, who was the former governor of Pennsylvania and the first secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. And he's one of our board members. So that's just a bit of background on who we are. And in terms of what we do for brokers like Bryson, we're specialists in niche coverage. So we're 100% focused on cyber insurance, and we're able to provide that oversight of trends in insurance policies and education on emerging issues. And for end clients or for insureds, we can ensure that you're obtaining proper coverage. We can technically or typically provide better pricing than someone who might not be as well versed or as comfortable in the market. And we can always be an expert resource for questions, concerns, and referrals to IT providers and the like. To move forward with the meat of the presentation, I'm going to talk about common cyber incidents that we're seeing in the market and we're seeing on our existing book of insureds. To narrow it down, focusing on two main things, and they are truly what's I would say representing, from our experience, probably above 75–80% of incidents, and that's social engineering or phishing and ransomware. For each of these, I'm going to go through a bit of their progression and a bit of the increase in sophistication and severity that we're seeing in each realm. So just a bit of a stat there on the bottom too. I think it's a bit higher than one of the ones that Kyle represented on, and it depends on, I guess, if you're looking at data breach or just network security or cyber incidents. And this one was 4 or 5 Canadian businesses reporting having dealt with at least one security breach in the past 12 months. And I can say that we're seeing a lot of that on our existing book of business, as well as new opportunities that we're seeing where we ask questions about prior incidents. So it's becoming a very, very common incident for Canadian businesses of all sizes. To start with the social engineering side of things, social engineering is defined as the use of deception to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential information or personal information that may be used for fraudulent purposes. It can also be used, obviously, to divulge or transfer funds to incorrect recipients or accounts. So to start off with kind of sophistication level low, or some of the early days things that we were seeing, and you may have heard of, is a gift card scam. So that's typically you get an email that appears to be from someone legitimate, asking you to go buy some gift cards and scratch the codes off the back and send them to them, whether it be for a client, a business client, or this has even crept into the personal realm where people imitate being the CRA or the revenue agency. And obviously that money just ends up in their accounts. They have been sometimes in this low sophistication using public email domains, so at gmail.com. They were typically more poorly written, pretty clearly that there was something off, or some odd fonts and logos. So that was more of the initiation of social engineering. It's certainly progressed. We're starting to see a little more sophistication, a little more tactics being used in terms of trying to cover their tracks of who they actually are. So registering similar domains and sending emails from those domains. If you look at those 2 emails there, the top one is my actual email with Ridge Canada, which is RID, and the bottom one is just ND, which is a common combination of letters that if you just look at in an email line, or don't even look at with focus, you may not notice that it's not the actual person you think you're receiving the email from. Email masking is another layer onto that, where even though it comes from Joe Smith somewhere, if my CFO's name is Richard Jones, then they will mask their email to say Richard Jones, so it looks again more like it's coming from a legitimate person. In these instances, they were typically using publicly available information So we actually had an incident like this, or an attempt like this on our company when we hired a new employee. We publicized that we hired a new employee. Our CFO's name is listed on our website. So in piecing that information together, our new employee got an email asking, actually it was a gift card scam, so it was on the other side of things, but to go buy gift cards in his first week working for us. It looks and feels more real. And the other common attack or item here that they're using is trying to get people to log into fake authentication or portals that they know people are using, whether it be Microsoft 365. They'll just blanket an email out, and if you click on the link and enter your credentials are then given over to the criminals. And using that tactics, they can get even to more high sophistication, where we see what is called a business email compromise. So now that they have those credentials, they have access to your email and possibly your other systems. We've seen them, be a little more patient in these situations where they will sit back, monitor the email traffic. They'll start to understand the behavior of the company, the roles and responsibilities. They will imitate internal communication styles. They'll implement email forwarding and deletion rules so that people don't realize that they've been taken out of a conversation and been replaced by their malicious messaging. And then finally, we are starting to see and hear more about deep fakes that should be audio and video or phone and video. But there have been incidents where phone attacks have been used with imitating senior executive voices to initiate funds transfers or corporate actions. And it's certainly a bit scary and much more complex. We're still obviously looking at ways to detect those. But with this kind of gradual increase in sophistication, we've obviously seen an increase in cost and demand. The gift card scam, obviously, they're likely to only get minimal dollars or a few $1,000s. But when they're able to imitate someone at a high level with a lot of authority, the value of the transfer or the data that they're transferring can be much more substantial. On to the next major item that we're seeing, and that's ransomware. And I'm sure most of you have heard about it. If you haven't heard about it, I encourage you to look into it. It is very prevalent in businesses around the world, definitely prevalent in Canadian businesses, and is causing major impacts. Again, started out as a bit more of a low sophistication attack and a lower ransom demand. They were more broad brushed approaches where they would try and get anybody out of thousands or millions of people to open an attachment and initiate their malware. And really, they were just hoping for a small percentage pickup on that broad brush campaign, which would lead to them earning millions and millions of dollars. It's progressed, certainly as they realized this was a money-making opportunity for them. They decided to build out that model or invest more money and become more strategic. And we've started to see what's called as ransomware as a service. So the cyber criminal or cyber coder who developed the ransomware will basically lease it out to other cyber criminals to administer the campaign for them and allow them to take a cut of the ransom. It separates them from the actual action and a lot of the admin, but allows their software to be proliferated a lot more widely. And we've also seen it lead with increased ransom demands, proliferation through connected systems where previously it might be isolated to a specific portion of your systems. Now it's very much crawling through your systems and expanding out into various areas and increasing the number of affected computers or servers that you may have, which obviously drives increased cost for you, as well as their ability to ask for increased demand due to that increased impact. And finally, we're starting to see some more extreme ransom demands in terms of the first, I'd say, 2 or 3 years, we were seeing, you know, things in the 50, 100, 500,000 for smaller medium businesses. We did see demands, you know, $1 million or more, but typically for very large entities. This has become much more prevalent for all sizes of entities. We actually had an incident with one of our clients that was on Monday this week, and they were about a 50 million annual revenue company, and they were held ransom for $700,000 US. So a very, very large amount in comparison to the size of the entity. But again, the cost to restore this, or the cost or the lost business cost that entities might incur if they don't resolve the issue, may far outweigh that $700,000 US. So it encourages clients to pay that ransom. Again, ways they're driving this high ransom, it's, you know, they're having a better understanding of important documents and clients. It's not always just personal information or personal health information. It's those, you know, those crown jewels of a company, depending on their operations. We're also seeing more data exfiltration, where previously the data was just encrypted. We're now seeing situations where it is transferred outside of the company, which obviously creates more liability and regulation issues. Data corruption, where the data is just destroyed or damaged, even in the instance where you do receive the decryption keys. And we're starting to see more threats and aggressive behavior from the cyber criminals, where they're threatening to expose this information to the public that you've been attacked. And Kyle brought up the Maze screenshot. Maze has been very popular for doing that, and for threatening to basically expose your business to your clients, the public, and regulators, which puts obviously more and more pressure on you to resolve those issues, or to resolve the encryption. Moving forward to some more kind of contextual or specific claims examples in each of those realms. So social engineering, we had a small healthcare entity, basically very similar to the incident that I described on our company. Luckily, our company, it was not successful, and we did not buy the gift cards. In this situation, the employee at the healthcare entity did buy the gift cards, and they were out about $1,500 or $2,000 because of it. We've had construction companies who might be dealing with a lot of vendors or third-party providers in building a construction project, and we've seen vendor banking detail changes be very prevalent. So the criminals will say, will pretend to be a vendor and will ask to update their banking details and banking payment details, so that when a payment is made, it goes to their accounts as opposed to legit vendor. And the vendor typically doesn't come knocking for 60 or 90 days until those amounts are overdue. On a medium healthcare side, we had a larger business email compromise. So in this situation, they gained access to the credentials and were able to set up those business email rules, so that an email to a specific individual was automatically deleted and forwarded to the criminal, who was an external person, and then they joined in on that email chain and kind of directed things the way they wanted, and you know, received data or monies that way. On the ransomware side, they're typically very, very similar occurrences. Systems are locked up, unable to access certain systems or your whole systems, and you're faced with an extortion demand. Originally, we were seeing smaller demands, so we did see some that were, you know, low six figures, 100, 150,000, but have started to increase drastically to the final one, which was a large manufacturer. And to emphasize the business interruption piece, this was a manufacturer that was using some just-in-time inventory and just-in-time development, and they were held ransom for over $1 million. But their loss in business, if they were unable to operate at their capacity, would have been approximately $750,000 per day. So basically, in 2 days, their business loss exceeded their ransom extortion. Just to demonstrate, obviously, again, with a very large manufacturing company, there is a very, very high potential for a large business interruption, but there certainly is that chance of business interruption regardless of the size of the entity that is under attack. A few high-level things here in terms of the main items that we see that are able to reduce the impact and the cost of these incidents is employee awareness and training. So they are, a company's first line of defense, being able to identify those odd emails or those odd things that are happening and asking someone internally before going ahead and opening it or going ahead and making that change. Planning ahead, Kyle touched on in terms of having an incident response plan or some type of idea of how you're going to react in these situations, who you're going to contact, how you're going to protect your business, and how you're going to move forward with your business. And finally, some basic IT hygiene. So firewall, antivirus, encryption, and software patching. Multi-factor authentication has become a massive one recently. So ensuring that if you're logging into company systems, that multi-factor authentication is required. It will limit and or prevent the ability of a criminal to log into those accounts with the credentials without having this separate multi-factor authentication. So a great protection step there. Email filtering to try and eliminate or identify those external emails or malicious, potentially malicious attachments. And of course, strong passwords. I'm a big supporter of using a password manager like LastPass or OnePass, and would encourage anybody to look into those and do so as well. This is a chart of that cost, impact, and mitigation that came from a Ponemon report, which is an annual report on the cost of a data breach. And the items at the top are the ones that have the most positive impact in terms of reducing the cost. So incident response team, use of encryption, employee training are all right up there at the top. To finalize things, or to finish things off in my section anyway, these are just a few high-level cyber resources that personally I love to use. I think that they've got great information for small, medium businesses, businesses of any industry. The government does have some great resources and continues to get better. And I've also included a few LinkedIn items below. I'm constantly posting news or updates or comments on ongoing things, and I'd be happy if you'd be interested in following me. With that, I will pass things over to Jeff to talk more a bit about what you can do to prepare yourself for these type of incidents.
Jeff, just before we move on over to you, Kyle, there was one question, and I would just love a 20-second answer to the philosophy of Ridge around your cyber application. Somebody was just commenting that, they found they tried to do one, but it was very tech heavy, technology language heavy. So just what is the philosophy behind your app?
Yeah, for sure. So we have two main applications. It's driven nearly primarily by size of business. We don't have separate applications for separate industries to try and keep that simple. We may ask additional questions depending on them, but in general, our philosophy for the application process is that we're looking at these key items and much more from a governance level, and having these practices and protocols instituted versus knowing specifically, which firewall or which systems and softwares you're using. It is much more from a high level governance board management perspective that we're looking at to ensure that that company has thought about it, is in that right mentality, and people are aware of the risks and have considered them.
Perfect, thank you. And that actually drives us perfectly into Jeff's section here. So Jeff, take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jeff. I am actually a career CFO, a finance guy. Came to cybersecurity through opportunities I've had to run tech. So just to set the stage for this, first of all, I want to thank the two fine gentlemen who preceded me, scaring the pants off just about everybody on the call. Normally, that's the job of the first part of my presentation. So I'm happy and excited to be able to bring you some things that you can do to mitigate some risk, steps you can take to help protect your business, and deal with outcomes by planning in advance what you need to do whenever those negative events happen. So as I said, I'm a career CFO. I took over IT a couple of years ago in a business that and I asked my IT department, hey, how are we doing in cybersecurity? I knew this was important. I knew I needed to know. Honest to God, I had 2 out of 3 people shrug and one of them say, we're okay, don't worry about it. And that was a problem for me. So much like many of the folks on the phone today, on the call today, I went looking for something that could give me the type of reporting I was used to as an accountant, right? I see balance sheets and income statements and they tell me about the performance of the business. I need to see something similar for cybersecurity. Unfortunately, I ran into too many professionals who said, you've just got to trust me, you're never going to understand this. And I have to tell you, that's incredibly frustrating for a business leader. So after doing a little bit of work, my partner, whose career in IT, running IT departments, strategically helping people, myself, we put together this idea that you need a dynamic assessment that allows you to establish where you are today and then track how you improve into the future. Really drive transparency and alignment throughout the business as you try to address cybersecurity concerns. And the thing that we hear most, and you'll see it as I go through starting points for addressing cyber in your business, this isn't just a tech problem. It genuinely isn't. There's none of the 3 people that you're hearing from today are programmers, developers, deep IT experts. At least I don't think that you guys are. We come from risk backgrounds. This is the biggest business risk facing companies in today's environment, short of COVID shutdowns. So get this conversation up to the level of your leadership team and express all of your concerns, your issues, your environment in plain English so that you can make appropriate decisions. I'm going to help you on that starting point today. So first of all, this was me, and I think this is many of you who are not in technology, who look at this big, scary, empty space in front of you called cyber risk, and you don't know how to step over it or deal with it. The reality is there are tools and people out there who can help you. They will draw plans up for your bridge and then build the bridge. And you need to reach out for that kind of help, but do it in a budget appropriate and stage appropriate way. One of the common pitfalls, again, is this focus on technology. And I never want to discount technology. This isn't about forgetting technology, but you saw the stats that Kyle presented around social engineering, around phishing and ransomware, around spear phishing, around the fact that almost every attack perpetrated today is perpetrated through some form of human involvement. Now let that sink in. I know we get a lot of questions around, what if I'm using this tool? What are the gaps there? What if I'm using this tool? Can it be exploited? And what if I get hacked? That's not where your concern is. You heard Kyle Gray saying that this is a pretty organized enterprise, that there are thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds and millions of emails that go out to people. This is a concentrated effort to exploit the lowest hanging fruit for these criminal organizations. They perpetrate the bulk of all cyber attacks. They do it through mass emails and other social engineering type of work because that is where the easiest exposure is, right? Low cost, high revenue. They operate under a business model like all of us do. Don't just protect your tech. Putting in a firewall, putting in a virus checker, that's all good stuff. That's not where you start, believe it or not. We actually had an organization come to us a year and a half ago, and said, hey, Jeff, 3 years ago, we did this audit. We had a tech person come in and do this full cybersecurity audit. We cleaned up our network. We hired a new service provider, and we were so confident that we were protected. 6 months ago, one of our employees clicked on an email they shouldn't have and shut us down for 2 days. And all of that work and all of that money spent, and they didn't close. So we go in, we meet with them, we meet with the board, we meet with the management, outline what we do. We said, we use tool X to do our education and phishing management and endpoint. And they said, oh, we have tool X. And I looked at them and said, but you've told me that you haven't been doing any of this awareness training for your people. Oh yeah, we didn't buy that module. We didn't turn it on. Well, that's ludicrous. You cannot address cybersecurity without looking at the whole picture. It's before you ever shoot at anything, you want to see the whole target. And that's what this graphic really is all about. Don't just focus on your technology. Take the steps you need to actually reduce your biggest risk. So I'm going to take this into a language or associated with a language that people might be more familiar with. I'd say show of hands, but we don't have hands on the camera. So GAP is an acronym that accountants have used forever. It means generally accepted accounting principles. And all it really does is say, when you're looking at finances, use a framework. And the framework says that you look at assets and liabilities and equity, and then you look at revenue and expenses. And if you start there, when you're evaluating where you are on the financial side, then you can drill into whatever else you need where there's a red flag of some sort. So what do you use in cybersecurity? And again, I'd ask people if we were all face-to-face, I'd say, start shouting them out. Unfortunately, for most people on the phone, no idea. It's not as well publicized. It's actually a remarkably fractured industry and segment. Dealing with cybersecurity is a little bit like the Wild West right now. But the secret to dealing with it in an appropriate way is finding a globally accepted framework and making sure whoever's assessing your risk is using that framework, whether it's a tool like we offer on the more inexpensive side, or a consulting engagement, or your internal people. Make sure that you know what framework is being used and that it is covering soup to nuts. We call them life cycle frameworks. They start with identifying your risk and they end with responding and recovering from attacks. To that end, I want to introduce you to my favorite of the frameworks that are available today. There are dozens of them. Anybody who wants to know more about frameworks applicable to specific industries or sectors, please feel free to ping me after. Happy to talk about it. I'm sure both Kyle and Kyle can do the same thing. NIST CSF is published out of a group in the US, and it is digestible. Okay, the reason I say that, when you talk about cybersecurity, like when you talk about accounting, you can make it incredibly complex. And that just means nobody's going to be interested. Nobody can follow what you're doing. And so you won't get the best decision coming out of any discussion. For cybersecurity, NIST CSF is 5 functions, 5. They're listed on the slide. Okay, this is not difficult to understand, no matter whether you're in IT or not. It has to, and I'll tell you about a bit of a crossover where it applies to so many different things. It's 108 individual controls under those 5 functions. And again, not thousands of questions, not, give me every piece of data or look at every file you've got. It is 108 controls that you need to be able to answer. So I'm going to take you through these individually, but basically what a lifecycle framework does is it says, go from start to finish. So identify where your risks are, protect against an attack, detect when there's an attack going on, and then respond to it, and finally recover. And recover doesn't just mean sending the Kyles a claim. This isn't just, I bought my insurance and so now I'm going to be fine. Okay, that isn't what recover means. Recover doesn't just mean spinning up your servers again because you had a backup somewhere. It means recovering your brand. It means recovering trust with your stakeholders. Okay, this is about planning in advance to make sure that you can continue running your business even after you've been an unfortunate victim of an attack. So we're going to start with identify. I'm going to tell a few stories in here just to keep you guys entertained. Again, the Kyles happily stole my thunder around some of the attack areas and the different incidents that they've run into. As Kyle Gray said, with their business having recently had an attack that they thwarted, we had a similar attack. I guess it was early summer, where somebody had written the best spear phishing email I've seen to our accounting head that was written from me. And it was very casual. It was extremely good English. This invoice seems to have slipped through the cracks. Could you please arrange payment when you get an opportunity? I can send it to you again. It was that kind of language. It was very well done. After a couple of exchanges, our accounting manager got the invoice already suspicious. She's been through our awareness training. She's been through the different steps that we take, our phishing tests. She actually contacted me through a different channel. She didn't email me. We established a second channel where she texted me to say, I just want to make sure that, this is on the up and up. I'm concerned. I'm contacting you through a safe second channel. Did you send me an invoice to process? And sure enough, it was a complete scam. It was an $80,000 US invoice that they expected her to just process because it came from me. She was able to see through that because of the training that she has. So let's start with identify. Identify means knowing where you're at risk, knowing your attack surface. Make sure that you have hardware and system inventories. If you don't know what is in your network, then you don't know what might be infected once you get attacked. Very, very difficult. Imagine you've just gone through an attack, you've had somebody come in and clean it up, they've spun back up all of the servers from backup, you're ready to go, and someone with an infected machine plugs back into the network. I mean, that's the equivalent of getting through the coronavirus shutdown, spinning back up again, and getting your clients back and suddenly having a cyber attack that you're not ready to respond to. Oh, wait, that's happening, okay? Don't be one of those people that are being attacked without being aware of what you should be doing afterwards. Don't allow employees to share accounts. I've been a CFO for a long time, and I have to tell you, it was commonplace in the 80s and 90s for everybody to use the same credential to log in, especially if you had someone filling in for sick leave. Instead of creating a new account, you just share your password and your login. If you do that, you open yourself up to risks, and you can't track back to where attacks might have come from. Identify and control those who can access your information. It speaks to role-based access. Okay, if somebody is working in your finance department on the AP side, they shouldn't have access to revenue. They shouldn't be doing your bank recs. They shouldn't. Yeah, this is segregation of duties really passed along into managing in your systems. And finally, make sure you have policies and procedures. And if you don't have them, again, you got 3 people here who can help you, and any number of others. If you don't have policies and procedures in place, privacy, use of technology, etc., then there's no way that your people can actually adhere to those policies. So now we're into protection. And again, I want to stress that what people often do is they spend a lot of time in these first couple sections and a lot of money, and then they completely forget that you need to be dealing with what might happen in the event of a successful attack. You can't stop at trying to protect yourself. I had a conversation with a client yesterday who said, but Jeff, we deal with AWS and cloud-based platforms, and so we don't need to have security procedures internally. Someone else manages all of that, so we're safe. Well, that's a fallacy. Zoom came off the shelf. It's a third-party platform. And unfortunately, it came off the shelf with all the security settings set to open. Welcome to Zoom bombing, right? My favorite word of the year. That didn't happen because Zoom is a bad technology. That didn't happen because it had security issues within the technology itself. It happened because they wanted to capture the market and opened their security features all to completely wide open. So if you didn't know to close them, you got attacked. So let's talk about protection. Protection means follow a patch management program. Kyle Gray highlighted this when he went through at the end of his bit. The things that you need to do to protect your business. Now we're a little bit into technology, but we're a lot into training your people. Patch management is critical on your machines and in your network and with your software. Install firewalls. Evaluate physical security. Everybody thinks that this is a tech problem, and I'm going to say it again. This isn't a tech problem. It's a people problem, and people are physical entities. Your servers, if you've got a server sitting in your office, if you've got laptops and you're working at home and you're doing it in front of a big window, and you just set it on the chaise in front of the window and off you go for a walk with your dog, everybody can see that technology sitting there. Evaluate your physical security. The theft of hardware is a cybersecurity issue. Set and monitor minimum password complexity requirements. A great point by Kyle. Use a password manager. We use Bitwarden. Strongly recommend you find a password manager. Even though they become targets and many of them have been attacked, they are prepared for that. It's all they do for a living. That's not what you do for a living. So using your nephew's first name and a 1 and an exclamation point is insufficient. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, still the most common password used today. All of that just means you are open to attack. And when you use it in multiple sites, the same password, all it needs to be compromised is once, and everything else you do is compromised. Set and monitor minimum password complexity requirements. Make sure that you're actually working with all of your team members, because it only takes one. We're vulnerable at our weakest point. So make sure that that weakest point has been raised up to be the level of risk that you think is appropriate for your organization. And finally, run training, regular training and phishing tests. If you're not running online awareness training on a monthly basis, 5-10 minutes, and running regular phishing tests, that is a huge challenge, okay? You absolutely need to be running those tests. You need to be educating and then testing. That's what drives awareness. Don't get me wrong, I love being in front of people, as do these two gentlemen. You bring me in once a year to do some big training session. 2 months later, they forget that they met me. All right, detection, vigilance. This is about detecting anomalous behavior. And there are very cool, expensive bleeding edge tools that do this. You don't need that. This is about, again, being aware. You need your people to be looking for that anomalous behavior. I got an email from Kyle, and it clearly is some form of ransomware or inappropriate phishing email. Gosh, I'm going to let Kyle know. Hey, Kyle, check and see if you've been compromised. This is a problem. Look for that anomalous behavior on the personal side, but also make sure you're monitoring your logs and looking for anything that's going on within your systems. Respond. You've got to be able to shut it down. You need to have a response plan. Both Kyles talked about this. Have your disaster recovery plan with the cybersecurity component. It is just another type of disaster. Be ready. Test the plan through exercises like tabletop exercises to make sure that it will work when you actually have that attack. And then, oh, wrong direction. Recover. You need to be able to recover. It is insufficient to be able to get your servers back up and to still go out of business because your clients won't come back. Have a backup strategy. Make sure that you have cyber insurance. And, you know, I'm sure that these guys will correct me because, you know, who am I? I'm just some CFO. But to me, cyber risk management is about operational risk management, which is what I'm talking about. And then a stop loss program, which when you have a catastrophic event around cyber, like somebody's managed to successfully attack you, then that's when insurance swoops in and gives you the resources to get back up to where you should be. That's what recovery is. Make sure your DRP is going to get you back to where you were before. And oh my gosh, above everything, make sure that you have a public relations firm that you can talk to, that you already have talked to on the day that you get attacked, because they will help you recover that trust and that brand, any damage that's been done. So I put some other frameworks on here really just to give you an idea that there are lots of them out there. NIST CSF is the one you need to remember. If you have any questions about frameworks, don't hesitate to let me know. And I'd be happy to talk about them. I've put some privacy ones on here too, because there tends to be a fair bit of crossover. Critical success factors when you're putting a program in. 1, executive level buy-in. This is nothing if it's just IT walking out saying this is important. Okay, your executive and your board need to demonstrate buy-in. You need to involve all members of the organization. We talked about this not being an IT problem, and frankly, it isn't. It's a business risk. So when we run an assessment, it involves HR, it involves operations and legal and disaster recovery. It is more than just IT. You need to involve everybody. Formally dedicate budget and agenda items to cybersecurity. I love the information that Kyle Patterson brought in around boards and executives. And if you are not operating at the same frequency that they are in talking about this at that level, you need to be. Formal budget line items. This isn't a part of the tech budget. Okay, this is its own budget related to risk. Otherwise, it will get dropped and you will be at risk. Fun slide. All you need to remember is cybersecurity has layers. Defense in depth means you don't just do one thing. Okay, you don't just put a firewall in and say we're okay. You deal with data security, application security, endpoint security, network security, perimeter security. You deal with your people and your systems. Make sure that you are addressing security in multiple layers in your organization. Shrek says so. Finally, I want to talk about competitive advantages and a couple of budget tips for the finance-minded people out there. you can actually not just use this, not have this as just a cost center or an expense, but use it as a brand promotion idea. Take cybersecurity and make it your friend. All right. When you are out there marketing, market that you are compliant with standards. Market you have, whether you can embed it with your existing services. So certainly the Kyles could go out there and say, you know, with our program, we are offering you X in terms of cybersecurity support. And this session is a good example of that. Kyle is kind enough to allow us to speak to you, but is delivering that extra value to you around cybersecurity. Not to increase premiums or drive more business necessarily. He's hoping to reduce your risk to help your business. Build your brand and digital trust by publishing what you're doing for cybersecurity, what framework you follow possibly. If you are following these steps, you can bid on contracts that are restricted to people with strong cybersecurity posture. Negotiate reduced cyber insurance premiums. I know these guys are going to yell at me for this. If you are taking appropriate steps to reduce your risk, whether those premium reductions can happen today or they happen as this industry evolves, pressure your insurers to recognize your efforts. I know, guys, don't yell at me after. They're going to yell at me.
Great.
You need, if you're taking steps to reduce your risk, then that is going to pay off for you in the long run. And build trust with potential investors, attract the highest quality board members. No board member likes going into a situation where they have potential risk. And if you have nothing going on cybersecurity, you are at risk. They will be asking those questions. Be prepared for them so you can attract the best talent. All right, budget considerations. I'm a CFO. I have to finish with budget considerations. Run an assessment. Run an assessment, run an assessment, run an assessment. If you do nothing else out of this, run an assessment. It will tell you the things you need to do next. It establishes the roadmap, and then you do that as your budget allows you. Prioritize based on exposure, okay, either cost to improve or the risk, okay, and make sure that you balance that. Create a separate cybersecurity line item. I mentioned that before. Review deliverables and priorities each quarter. Nobody gets away with just here's your budget and go away, right? You get them back into the meeting 1 quarter later and say, how much money did you spend that we approved for you? And tell us about how you've improved our risk. And cost versus risk models, I bring it up because it's a sexy thing for people to talk about, more sophisticated than a lot of businesses are ready for. They're out there, but the reality of cost versus risk is if you have a successful attack you're not prepared to deal with, the risk is you're going to lose your business. Make your decisions off of that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's my piece for today. I'll hand it back over to Kyle Patterson.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff. That was a really beautiful dive. And I'm going to come back into a couple of your slides here in a second. Before I do that, I just want to address the 2 questions that we did get in here that are both related to each other. It's both technology related questions. And I'm not sure who wants to answer. But one question was around, utilizing software like Outlook 365 or just Outlook in general for their email. What's the risks of that? I think, if you go back into what Kyle Gray spoke to earlier around the simplicity of phishing attacks and clicking in an email, the Outlook email is encrypted by Microsoft, but it's still triggering a human event regardless of what email system you use. Kyle or Jeff, is there anything else you want to add to that around what are the specific risks around, Outlook 365 or any type of email software?
I'll just chime in from a very high level. I think it's great to use reputable third-party companies for their services and products, but it doesn't absolve you of the risk and all those things that come with it. So using SharePoint and Microsoft Office 365 is great versus using potentially something you developed on your own back end on a local server, but it doesn't absolve you of all risk. And you can certainly still receive an email on Microsoft 365 that has a malicious attachment or encourages you to do something through human behavior that could cause your company a lot of issues.
Yeah, and you touched on SharePoint. That was the other question around, can we still be hacked utilizing SharePoint? I mean, the answer is obviously, yes, is it hacking into SharePoint? I mean, that's one type of risk, but there's a bunch of entry points that exist there. One of the things that I think a lot of cyber policies, insurance policies, or people don't talk about is the risk of rogue employee. And SharePoint is a fantastic tool, but it does make it easier to, whether it's malicious or unintentional, for employees to share sensitive data by copying and pasting a link and sending it to the wrong email address, or sending it out to themselves to utilize in other places. So, rogue employee is a big risk. We've seen it populate a few times already. Desjardins is the most recent example in my head. But is there anything else you guys want to add around that SharePoint question?
No, that's Kyle. It's a great point that insiders, once you're inside behind the veil, inside the organization, behind a firewall, you are the biggest exposure point. We can all spend tons of time trying to close all of these gaps or deal with tools that can never be hacked, but there's no such thing. Every tool can be hacked, but what's making you a target for a hacker to spend that kind of money? Nothing. What they're going after is, as both of you hit on before, it's these mass campaigns where you're trying to get an insider to be compromised on their credentials. And once you get their credentials, you have access to everything.
Great. And I mean, it's another type of solution, Barracuda. I'm not sure if either of you are familiar with the software or the platform. Are either of you familiar with it before I ask the question? Because I won't ask it if there's no familiarity. No?
I've heard
specific.
I wouldn't know the IT details on it, but I think kind of chiming back to one of Jeff's points, just having a product is one thing, but implementing it and utilizing it and customizing it to your environment is key in the efficiency of those products.
And an interesting question here around the police. So I can elaborate on this one, but we haven't discussed the police. How useful are they in the response to these incidences? And then I'll just add to the question that someone else has is around other government agencies. Is there anything else that are responsive or helpful if you have an incident?
From our experience, I mean, the police are constantly building up their cyber expertise. I think that they're working hard on it, but still a bit behind. In incidents that we've had where police have been noticed, I haven't seen any major impact to the entity from the police. I think it's a great step and a measure in terms of coordinating some type of overall approach against these cyber criminals and allowing police to consolidate that information and hopefully in years to come do something on a larger scale against them. But in an individual situation, I think there's limited help that comes back from the police in terms of restoring your data or your business to the place it was previously. In terms of other agencies, for helping, can't think of anything off the top of my mind. Obviously, the Information and Privacy Commissioner is there, and there's required reporting. But to say that that's helping, I think would be overstepping.
Yeah, and just from the police, I read about a piece around them trying to take down a ransomware ring, and it was in a foreign country, and so people kept reporting to the police that this was going on, but the police were really limited in their scope of how far they could take it. So I think the police are there with the best intentions, but this is a global attack issue, and it's not easy to coordinate global efforts across these types of forces and agencies across the globe. Which allows these companies in foreign places to just have free will to keep on going at it. And when they take down one home, it's an actual home with a bunch of rooms with beds, and they get up and they go on their computer and they just go at it all day. When they take down that one home, they go to some other neighborhood somewhere else and they start up shop again. So it's not very clean cut and easy. To put an end to such incidences and issues. We are coming up to the end here, so there was just one last question that I think is really fantastic. So, Baldev, I want to answer your question here on behalf of Jeff, and Jeff, you can add anything that you'd want to add here. So, when I see this slide here, it seems like a big buffet, and it's way too much to even try to think about how can I eat all of this stuff and get it through. And one of the things that Jeff's solution does is do a really nice assessment and audit at a layman's term language. There's some pieces in it that, you know, are obviously a bit more advanced, but it depends on your operation and where you need to get to. But Jeff takes this really, you know, over-consuming piece and turns it into something that is very easy to manage and have conversations about, which brings it into these areas of conversation. And there's scoring and there's ranking, and it really makes it an easy, digestible conversation, because when you really want to do it right and do it well, it's all of this stuff, but it's great when you can get it reported like this. And you know, and just to take away this as well, I'm personally always happy to have a conversation with anybody in here and go through a cyber application. It's important to not only just understand what it costs from a budgeting perspective, but by just going through the application at a very high level, you can have a much better understanding of what your risks are. But it's super important to make sure that the policy you have actually protects your risks. It's quite, you know, I would say the cybersecurity or cyber insurance landscape is still a bit like the wild, wild west. Every policy is different. They're covering different things. It is not black and white. It's quite gray. And, you know, a solution like Ridge is actually quite fulsome and really cost appropriate as well. But, you know, Jeff's audit is a beautiful deep dive. And if you want to just have a conversation to find out what it would cost to put it on, you know, to actually protect yourself from the back end piece, if you did have an incident and you needed to recover from a financial perspective, that's what I'm here for. And Jeff's to make sure that you don't have to call Kyle or myself. So is there any final piece you two want to contribute here before we end out for today?
No, I think I've touched on everything there, and you guys have brought up some main points to fill in items that I had on top of mine too.
Yeah. All right. Thank everybody. This is like attending something like this is really that first step in awareness and making sure you're doing the right things for your business and your organization. Kyle highlighted early on, it doesn't matter whether you're private, whether you're public, or whether you're not for profit. We work with all of those groups, as do these two gentlemen and their organizations. Please reach out. We have solutions that fit everybody for their budgets and their risk levels, and more than happy to help you with your journey.
Take care, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Reach out if you have any questions following this. Take care. Bye-bye.